that note, I think what we might do is we might kick off and I'll just admit people as we go. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name's Jane and I'm one of the education officers with PIEFA. I'd like to start by acknowledging the country from which I'm speaking to you today, which is Wathaurong country. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. PIEFA acknowledges the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the traditional custodians of this land, and we all pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. A little bit of housekeeping before we get into things. As I can see, most of you have got your screens, your cameras and your microphones switched off, which is much appreciated. For schools that are joining us today, we just do ask that your cameras are switched off because we have the session being recorded. And FRDC is going to take a few photos throughout the session. So if you are another participant who's not comfortable with your photos being taken, please make sure that your cameras are switched off. If you have questions throughout the session, you're more than welcome to pop those in the chat box. And there'll also be a designated question session at the end for all of our panelists. Thanks again so much for joining us today. We're really appreciative and we've got a fantastic panel lined up for you. So I'm now going to hand over to Luciano, who is PIEFA's CEO. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jane, and thank you to everyone for joining us today at the at our one of our careers panels for National Careers Week. We're at the end of National Careers Week, and this is our FRDC Careers panel, and we're quite grateful to have three very exciting presenters and speakers with us today. So the format for today is that our three speakers will talk a lot about their particular roles in their industry and give us an insight into the story of their current work, but also a bit of history as to how they got to where they are today. It's very important for us to really understand that there's no one direct pathway in any career, and it's wonderful to have some insights into each of these individuals in terms of their journey in their career in fisheries and aquaculture. So what I might do, I'll just give a short description to each of our panelists for you today, and then we're going to start a process where I'll ask some questions of each of our panelists. So we have Christine Huim, who's a veterinarian and aquaculture consultant with an extensive experience of working in a variety of species, including salmon, barramundi, abalone, prawns, trout, kingfish, tuna, and native Australian fish. She's the founder of the Nautilus Collaboration, her own consultancy company, which works with startups, family fish farms, and companies trying to bring their own product to the market. And she's also worked with the likes of the World Bank. So Christine has a wealth of experience and also studied veterinary science at the University of Sydney. She loves the people in aquaculture and enjoys developing healthy teams to respond to emergencies, and a range of different wonderful activities within her career. So I'll get her to talk a bit more about that very soon. Also on the panel today, we have Brian Van Wyk, who's the Fleet Operations Manager at Austral Fisheries, Australia's leading integrated commercial fishing company, bringing high-quality, sustainable caught seafood products to customers around the world for over 40 years. Austral's fleet consists of 15 vessels ranging from toothfish in the south to prawns and tropical reef fish in the north. Brian's very passionate about attracting and retaining great people in the seafood industry. He's also involved in the Austral Academy, a school outreach program. So thank you for joining us, Brian. And our last panelist is Shane Gilly. Shane is an experienced manager with a demonstrated history of working in the maritime and seafood industry. He's skilled in vocational training, workplace risk, and safety management. He's currently the training manager at the Seafood and Maritime Training Australia, where he's been working for a number of years. Prior to this, he's worked with the Tassel Group and started as an induction and training coordinator. So each of our panelists today have a vast range of experiences and stories to tell us today. So what I'm going to do is ask some questions and ask each of our panelists to respond, and then we should have time for a general discussion overall. So what I'll start by asking the first lot of questions, and I'll invite Christine to respond first of all. And Christine, could you describe your role and briefly explain why and how you ended up in your current position?
This is a long-winded journey. So I'm currently managing director of the consultancy firm, and we have a wonderful team. Honestly, the people are really what make the business, and particularly the different perspectives of how you can look at a single problem. So we don't specialize in like any one technical service, right? We're not like a veterinary consultancy. We have people with a lot of differing skill sets. You know, we've got a mathematician on the team. We have people that are specialized in software programming to solve problems together for aquaculture businesses. I actually started out with this is going to sound really nerdy, but I started out with an advanced science degree, and I majored in chemistry and mathematics, and then moved across into veterinary medicine. And from that, I didn't actually know that you could become an aquaculture vet, right? So when I was going through my degree, like you learn about all the different species. So you know how to deal with rabbits, you know how to deal with dogs, cats, horses, cattle. And we did a very, very small topic on aquaculture in a topic called epidemiology, which is a study of disease in populations. And then I thought, oh my goodness, I can work with fish and be a vet. This is amazing. And so once I actually discovered that, I took up some placements within the aquaculture industry. There aren't many veterinary aquaculture placements. So when I first started, it was really just working on farms, and it was doing health technician work, which is great because then you get to learn about the different production systems. Then I was working in a little consultancy business, moved into Tassal group actually, where I was working with Shane for some time, and then after that moved into a family office based in Switzerland, just to get a little bit more exposure from a financial management perspective, and then after that opened the consultancy business with my business partner Belinda.
Fantastic.
It's very long-winded, the journey.
Well, I mean, that's the point in all of this. There's just not one single pathway to get from where you begin to where you are now. But so you talked about some of the qualifications that you've received. So science degree, veterinary degree. Were they the main sort of things? What about work experience? What sort of work experience did you do, or what experiences really framed and assisted you to work out where you wanted to go?
It actually started off when I was like a really young kid, actually, because I was keeping African cichlids, and African cichlids are quite difficult to breed. I was keeping frontosias, electric yellows, and these. Anyway, I won't go into the detail. You don't need to know. But I was trying to breed them, and when I was little, I was like, oh, you know, I could make some money breeding some cichlids. And so I actually started my interest in fish from a fairly young age and got into diving and everything. And then when I went to university, I did do a number of placements in aquaculture and particularly actually in intensive production medicine. So there's a topic that you take at school, and you take this if you do animal biosciences as well as veterinary science, but it's production animal husbandry. So it's about the more intensive industries like dairy cattle, beef cattle, chickens and pigs. And I actually really loved those topics because you realize that the strategies that you put in place can affect not just a single animal, but hundreds of thousands. So you can essentially better their welfare by making crucial decisions relating to production and vaccine strategy and preventative medicine.
Wonderful. I guess you're very passionate about the space. And so why did you decide to work in the fisheries and aquaculture industry? What was the main thing that made you really think this is what I want to do?
I think the innovative side of aquaculture was really what drew me into the industry. So when I was doing my work placements, you don't really get taught that much about aquaculture in vet school, right? So it's a very minor topic of discussion. And when I went to start working on fish farms, the people are really what drew me in, like the way that they were able to problem solve, the teams that were on fish farms, how passionate the managers were and the technicians were that worked in the industry. Because, you know, when you work in aquaculture, the people that work in it love aquaculture. They love feeding fish. They love handling fish. And that's actually what drew me into the industry in the first place, because you get to work with amazing people. You get to handle really awesome animals. And then on top of that, you know that you can create an impact on providing quality food to consumers.
Wonderful. Thank you for those insights. And well, I'll be asking you a couple more questions later on. So thank you, Christine. Next, I'd like to ask Shane a couple of questions. So Shane, could you describe your current role and briefly explain why and how you ended up in your current position?
Sure, Luke. Yeah, look, it's a long story, but if we start about the current role as the training manager for seafood and maritime training, we have about 2,400 enrolments through every calendar year. We run a contract trainer program where our trainers, a pool of 26 trainers, are still operating in the fields, but then come in and deliver as subject matter experts in the different processes. As I was saying to Jane before, the winter period for us is our peak period. Nobody wants to be on the water in winter, so great opportunity to get into a classroom and upskill and develop. I suppose really what sets us apart, we were set as an industry body to support the industry. So the idea is, as a not-for-profit, we put back into the sector. We get students that are entry-level school kids. We've got Reese High School students with us this week. They're looking as a pathway to get into the industry. And then we've got senior farmhands, operators, managers that are doing their Cert 4 programs. They're doing their Master 45s. So it really takes them right through that journey in their career progression. And that's how we're set up. If the industry needs the training and development, then that's, what we're about. But then if you take it back to how I got into this, that starts from a young age. I was someone who was always keen to be on the water or under the water, loved my diving, and found that marine science through college was a good way to start a career. It was that classic work experience. So part of the program is we did 2-week work experience blocks, abalone farms, oyster farms, and salmon. So it was an opportunity for me to get seen and put my best foot forward. So after 2 weeks work experience, I was offered a role with one of the companies that eventually became Tassal. And probably a different industry back then, with you needed to be somewhat of a jack of all trades. So my jobs in the morning at 4 o'clock is harvesting operations, and then no sooner we finish that, you're putting on a wetsuit to go and dive. And once you finish your dive profile, you're back out of your wetsuit doing other fish husbandry activities, net maintenance, anything that was required of the role. So it really took me through. Even through my schooling years, I was a deckie on a crayfishing boat out in the Southern Ocean. Didn't find that all that enjoyable. Seasickness is something that I've really battled with. So adding diesel fumes and baiting up grey pots in 2 or 3 meters of swell was an interesting combination, to put it nicely.
I'm sure. And so obviously you've apart from the work experience, what sort of qualifications have you acquired to get you to where you are today?
Yeah, so that's really tied in with my career experience, I suppose. I was managing risk for Tassal in their mainland operations for a number of years, so that then dovetailed into an advanced diploma in workplace risk. Part of my role with these operations was vessel management, so I hold a Master 24 with offshore operations within it. So yeah, look, I'm more of a do jobs, get qualified to fulfill the role kind of person. My skill set was more into the operational side of things, but just natural progression into the managerial role. Yeah, throughout that course of that, I'd worked with Matt and Christine over the years, and Matt was with us at Seafood Training back then. So he reached out and said, we've got a great new opportunity to expand the business. Are you interested in coming on board? So that was my stepping into the RTO space, the education space, where I went and did a Cert 4 in training and assessment, and yeah, learned on the job.
Well, education is so important in all of this, and it's a key thing that I think that no matter which job you have, you keep learning and you keep expanding and you keep looking for opportunities. And I think that's a key thing that you were just saying, in that you adapted, you got a new role, so then you had to train up to be able to achieve that. And I think that's really an important skill when you're looking at working in an industry, that it's not that you do the same thing for X amount of years, that you keep learning and changing and adapting. So, and you don't necessarily have to have a master's degree or a PhD to be able to do a lot of the roles that exist in the industry.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I reflect back on an opportunity. I was more than happy working on the farming operations. I was away for a week in training, and I was asked to take on a HSR role, so health and safety representative role. That, simply by me saying yes to that, then opened me up to an opportunity in the corporate structure that went on to managing risk for New South Wales, Brisbane, and Melbourne offices for the organisation. So it was just about, trying something new, putting my hand up and saying, yep, I want to try it. I just need to get the skill sets and the education behind me to support that. And when you're with the right organisations and you've got that understanding of what it takes, then I see the education as complementary to the skill sets.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Shane. That's a great insight into your journey. Next, I'd like to ask Brian a few questions. So, Brian, can you please describe your current role and why and how you ended up in your current position?
Yeah, sure. This one's an interesting one. I get asked this all the time, friends and family, and it is a difficult one to explain because it's so diverse. But basically, I work for Austral Fisheries, one of the largest seafood companies in Australia. We have many businesses, assets, operations all over the country, including a lot of exports to overseas with seafood. The particular part of the business I'm involved in is in the northern prawn fishery. So if you imagine the very tip of Australia, Cape York, Queensland, from that area there all the way through to Western Australia NT border, all the water in between that's our fishery. We own and operate 11 boats out of there, so 88 crew members working 6 months a year. I work in a team, so it's a really significant operation. Like, we're working Monday to Friday, 5 days a week, plus some parts of the year, 7 days, day and night, all year round. My job title is operations manager. So in a nutshell, my role is to ensure that business is functioning or operating well, that it's sustainable, safe, and it makes money, like all good businesses should. But I get to do some pretty cool and diverse things as well as part of my role. So, for example, just last month, I was living in Corumba, so a little small fishing town in the Gulf of Carpentaria, flying around every day in aeroplanes looking for prawns from the sky. So prawn school up, you can find mass congregations and then directing all the boats to go and catch them. It's a pretty cool feeling. Next week, I'll be in Brisbane attending some fisheries management meetings. Later on this year, I could be at sea doing some work on sawfish and bycatch reduction. So it's about a 50-50 split of office management and practical work, which suits me fine. That's a good balance for me. How I got here, pretty easy story really. From a very young age, I was obsessed with the ocean, all things in it. Fell in love with fishing, diving, spear fishing, like absolutely obsessed. Every day after school to the beach. My high school was right on the beach there in Tasmania. So, we were always getting abalone, crayfish, that sort of stuff. And I remember being at high school at a pretty critical age, towards the end of high school where everyone's starting to pick careers. And I had no idea what I wanted to do, like most people. And all I knew is I didn't want to get stuck in a job I didn't like. That was my biggest fear, doing something for most of the rest of your life you didn't enjoy. That's pretty sad. So I tried to keep my doors and windows open. I started focusing on school, math, science, English. I went to a fantastic university in Tassie called Australian Maritime College. Probably heard of it. Really good hands-on experiences there. Did a year of honours and nearly went to PhD, but thankfully got rescued and joined the fishing industry. I've been here ever since. So 8 years on, or nearly 8 years, I'm still here, loving it. Each year the role grows, progresses, more and more responsibility, and loving it.
Wow, that you've really encompassed your whole story really, really well there, and obviously have had a passion from day one, and been fortunate to be in an area where you can take up those opportunities. So just in terms of your qualifications, so what are your qualifications?
So, well, if you look at it on paper now, it's pretty. I'd have a pretty good resume, but starting out, it wasn't much. I had a degree in marine science, so fisheries management, bit of aquaculture there. Did an honours year. Other than that, various leadership programs and like sort of ad hoc stuff. I think Shane made a really good point. When you're with the right organisation and you show enthusiasm, they will invest in you. So you get a lot of these skills later on. It's all about having the sort of right personality traits and work ethics to begin with. So, yeah.
I think you've gotten on some really important points there in terms of, if you show initiative and enthusiasm, then the world's your oyster. No, that's a bad pun, but anyway, that at least the opportunities are there, but it's a matter of whether you're willing to take them on board or not. So so just thinking about your the area that you work in, how might a young person looking to join your industry get involved? What are the current pathways? How do they get involved? How do they know about your particular career?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are so many different pathways. Like if you drew them all up, there'd be over 1,000 different pathways to get into my industry, the seafood industry. My story is just one of many. You don't have to go to uni to get into fisheries or even, the seafood industry. To me, I think, so the path, if you're going to join into an industry like this, the first thing as a student you want to ask yourself is, what are your values? What are your passions? What are your interests? For me, it was easy. I was fishing, ocean, seafood. Others might not find that interesting. That's okay. There's still plenty of options out there. If you're hands-on, you can do trades. You can go through engineering. If you're good with numbers, there are so many different accounting jobs in the seafood industry. If maybe you're good at selling stuff, there's marketing careers and if you don't like any of that, maybe you can handle the seasickness. Unlike Shane, there's plenty of fishing jobs. Like our CEO started as a deckhand. Like if there's a pathway right there that would be way out of whack. So we run Austral Academy, which is a fantastic program that reaches out to schools to spread the messages. But if someone's enthusiastic or keen to get in this industry, it's actually surprisingly easy. It's just putting your hand up saying, hey, I'm interested. These are my interests. I'm ready to have a go. You could start massive life journeys through pathways like that.
Wow, that's exciting, and that's good to know, because a lot of times young people are not aware of well, they might be aware of what it might look like. They want to work on a boat or work somewhere along the industry, but they're not aware of all the aspects of the industry. So I think that's really the key issue, I suppose, with careers across the board, not really being exposed or understand what is happening. And then there's a whole range of careers along the supply chain, and so I think you've really highlighted some really important points there. So thank you, Brian. So I've got a couple more questions here, and so I guess and I'll ask our three panelists to respond to this. So one of the aspects of careers and the world in which we live in is technology, and technology plays an important part in the way that we especially the fisheries and aquaculture industry, many other industries in food and fibre exist today, but due to the fact there's a range of technologies. And from the outside, a lot of people are not aware of the fact that there's so much technology being used to really make the industries and food and fibre industries efficient and productive and the like. So I might ask our three panelists to maybe talk about some of the technology that they know about in their industry that they use in their role, and something that we could showcase to really put to the forth how technology is so important. So we might start with we'll go around the room. We'll start with Christine.
I'll unmute myself. Well, this is a really broad topic, technology, right? So we get involved in a lot of different tech development and testing. So our business collaborates with technology providers, and we do like commercial pilot tests for them. So maybe I'll give you a few examples. There are now water sensors that you are able to deploy that use the Internet of Things, so that you're able to monitor in real time pond infrastructure and log the data, saving the data either remotely or sometimes on site, depending on your internet connectivity. They will actually have alarm systems and trigger limits. You can turn paddle wheels on and off with these basic programs. There are dashboards that allow you to visualize the data. We are involved in biomass estimators as well. So sonar systems that will do biomass estimation in ponds, and counting. So using machine learning tools to identify, trace, and count individual animals, whether it's finfish or prawns. And there are so many cool startup companies out there that are giving all of these things a go. So like adapting facial recognition tools, for example, for image analysis. You use, I don't know if I should mention this, but you use things like YOLO 5, right? Which is like something that is open. You can train it to detect individual prawns if you want, so that you can use it for counting. But there are so many cool technology projects now and startups that are rising in aquaculture. And another really great example is pellet detection in aquaculture. So using underwater cameras to detect pellets and reduce feeding rates to particular pens without the aid of a person. So all of these things are completely programmable, And actually, it's another really interesting area of aquaculture that's up and coming, where we're using artificial intelligence in aquaculture more and more each year. And so there's a need for computer science graduates, mathematics graduates that really understand programming to come into the industry to help develop these technologies.
Wonderful. And I was hoping someone would mention artificial intelligence straight up, and that it's the hot topic at the moment. And
yeah, it totally is. Yeah.
Yeah. So and so I guess look, it just sounds really exciting, and really we're at an amazing time for development of new technology, especially in that space of artificial intelligence. And when you talk about startups, I mean, it's a great opportunity for young people to really think about that as a means by which to to build on an idea and come up with a product that's possibly scalable and commercially viable. So there are so many startups in Australia that are doing pretty exciting things. So
yeah. And there's some mentorship programs now that are available for startups. You know, when you first come out, you don't have as much experience, right? And experience is really needed to make a successful business. But there's a lot of really good programs like Hatch, Go Grow accelerators, some venture capitals. They provide mentorship programs for young startup companies and provide aid to get required investments or grants. Yep.
And how would someone find that information?
Good question. I would say that the best thing to do if you're looking at exploring an idea and wanting to, bring it to commercial fruition is to get the right mentors. So you need a big variety of mentors, right? Like it's not just a mentor in software programming that you require. You need that. You need somebody that understands securities and data security. You need people who understand finance. You might need production people to make your product relevant for the industry. So it's really about the problem that you're trying to solve, and then collaborating with the right people to provide mentorship to you to make your business successful, knowing that a single person isn't going to know everything that you require.
Indeed. That's and some really good points there, and Brian as well, in that, in your industry, you need people with a range of different skills and abilities. You need the hands-on people. You need the people who have finance knowledge, veterinary knowledge, people skills knowledge. So basically, every career that exists currently in the wider sphere of the world that we live in is required, but with a hat that is working in fisheries and aquaculture. And I think that's a really important point to make. That really there's such a wide scope of different careers that are required in the industry. So, Shane, what about technology in your field?
Yeah, well, Christine covered AI very well. So I think the area that we're seeing is robotics. So a real growth at the moment is all about ROV work. So you imagine a farmer needs to keep an eye on their stock. So traditionally it was either a diver or a camera system. The progress in ROV technology is really going ahead in leaps and bounds. We're finding more and more of that skill set and the inventive nature of what ROVs can do. One of the projects we're working on at the moment is with CSIRO on the monitoring of the spotted handfish down here. So, they've had divers for years swimming search grid patterns and monitoring it. Now with the deeper profiles to try and acquire and identify more of this species, they're putting ROVs in. There's a startup out of Queensland that are now putting technology into it that will map it out, so AI that will map it out for them. That reviews the video footage and helps track. And you get back to the aquaculture space, and these guys are doing a lot of their inspections, a lot of the bottom surveys. you take it back to when I was there, you used to see a diver in the water at 18 metres and do benthic core samples. It wasn't that glamorous. So now they're sending down ROVs to do the work, and that's the big change. And the packagings around training in this space are really coming along. So now there's recognised pathways within to a Cert 3 and Cert 4 level in this space that's supporting the growth of the sector.
Wonderful. They're really good insights there, and I guess even though you need to understand the intricacies of the industry, there's need for skills in that technology area, and really how to adapt and be creative in terms of the sorts of ways in which you can manage the industries that you're working with. So very, very good. And robotics, I had no idea. That's wonderful. Robotics seem to be in every quadrant at the moment. What about you, Brian? What about the technology that you use? Because I'm sure it sounds exciting.
Yeah, well, we're a little bit far behind from Christine and Shane. We haven't touched on AI or robotics, unfortunately. It would be cool to have artificial intelligence fishing for us. That'd be great. If you go back sort of 60, 70 years on a boat in the fishery, you'd be amazed what they had. They virtually had nothing. It was a handheld compass that you'd give to like a little child doing scouts at the moment, and like not far off dropping a rock on a string to work out how deep you were in. And if you look at it now, like you'd be blown away. We've got like radars that can see vessels. You can't even see them. They're well beyond the horizon, yet we know exactly what they're doing, which way they're heading, what boat it is. We've got sounders or fish finders now that can tell the difference between prawns and fish. We've got satellite internet systems that are building databases, maybe to feed AI one day. Don't know yet. I've got literally sitting next to virtual reality sets that we've got here. We've mapped out what it's like to work on a prawn trawler to showcase students, part of the academy. But if I was going to choose one to talk about, it would probably be, it hasn't been mentioned yet, but traceability. So we're using radio frequency tagging to attempt to trace product from the moment it's caught to the moment it's consumed. So basically, if you can imagine being able to catch prawns or fish or whatever it is, pack it on a box, enter in all the information like where it was caught, what species, the size, everything to do with the fishery, and have it all embedded into one code with one scan, and then have that information travel with the product. So when it's in a cold store, it gets rescanned and that information goes to it. When it's at a wholesaler, it can get rescanned, all the way to the point of a consumer that can scan it on their phone through a QR code and see where that product's been, where it's come from. The whole idea behind it, mainly driven by sustainability. So being able to say that you're getting what you pay for, that this is not a legal product substituted from somewhere in the world. It is what it is. But yeah, there's a whole lot of other things in there too. It builds recipes and all sorts of stuff. That's a pretty cool space. That's an emerging area in seafood. I think it will be quite important as we go on through sustainability and overfishing, growing populations, that sort of thing. So that's a cool one for you.
Wonderful, thank you. Look, I'm an ex-teacher, and I used to teach aquaculture in my classes. And one of the things that students ask me all the time is, how do we know how many fish there are in the ocean, or how many fish there are in total? Because not all fish are grown in the ocean, but some of them are farmed. And how do we know if we've got enough fish, and how do we make sure that we don't run out? They were really big questions, and Brian, you might know, and Christine and obviously Shane might know. Can you give a quick answer to that?
Not really. They're still very difficult questions. Christine might, or someone else, but
I'd say that they're very difficult because of the way that we regulate fishing, and then also the way that we survey as well. I mean, when you're doing a survey, it's not like you can canvass a massive part of the ocean,
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So science does its best to try to estimate it, knowing that there's probably decent degree of error with the estimations, and then that's how we try best to manage it. But it's like ordering a pizza and then taking like a really, really tiny bit and then trying to work out what flavor of pizza it is,
Yeah.
So it can be really tricky. Yeah.
Good way to put it. Good answer.
Indeed, that's a fantastic answer. All good. Well, we've got a little bit of time left. I just would like to ask each of you, and just a brief response to this. So, obviously each job has its sort of challenges and requirements. What are some of the challenges, maybe 2 challenges you face in your role, and how you manage these? So the challenges in terms of your day-to-day role and how would you manage those? So we might start with Shane.
First challenge was taking myself off mute, so I'm glad I got that out of the way. Look, I think the consistent thing throughout my career has been problem solving. The obvious challenge is if you're farming a wild animal or you're working with a group of people, things don't always go as we plan. And the ability to be able to problem solve with constructive, effective outcomes is really a skill set that you need to work on and develop. And that comes with experience. That's the reality of it. You may have that makeup as an individual, but learning your trade and your craft really helps you to adapt and overcome the challenges. Like Brian, we work out in a wild environment. You can forecast, you can use all the tech we can have available, but the reality is when you step out there or you're in that environment, things will change on you. Okay, and that's a big part of the ongoing challenges that we face. The other one probably in this is, in my space particularly, is we're in a sector that's growing rapidly in terms of the technology that we've just talked about, the processes that we do. So the challenges from a training organisation is staying at the forefront of that. Our goal is to put people into the industry or back in the sector that have had that training and exposure to the frontline equipment and processes that they're going to experience. So, that's the 2 underpinning points from my side of things. But we did touch on before the whole point of the pathway being how do you get in, entry-level qualifications like elements of shipboard safety. You hear time and time again, people that are interested in it step into these 2-day, 3-day programs. They're sitting next to someone that's in the industry. Oh, how'd you get into it? Oh, I talked to Steve down the road. Great. Can I talk to Steve? All of a sudden, they've got a job in the sector. So putting yourself out there, asking the questions, and really just, following your interests. Like Brian said, the 3 of us, we've got in common that we're all passionate about this space, and look where we found ourselves.
Indeed. You mentioned 2 really important things there, and I think the whole concept of problem solving, in that, a lot of our roles are all about problem solving and managing people, managing resources, and being able to adapt very quickly to change. But also the fact that, there's rapid growth in every industry at the moment, and there's so much to know and learn. And so keeping up to date is just quite a huge part of the role, as opposed to 30, 40, 50 years ago when change was slow, and now change is rapid, and keeping on top of it is quite challenging. What about yourself, Brian?
Luch, sorry, can I just jump in right before Brian speaks, and just my eyes on the time, can I invite anyone that may have questions from our audience to just pop them in the chat while Brian and Christina are answering this next one, and then we'll be able to line up your questions.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jane.
Yeah, no worries. All right, I'll keep this brief. Biggest challenge by far continually for us is climate change, without doubt, in 2 aspects. One being the actual changing environment. So we're, especially in the tropics here, our prawns are very dependent on the environment. Like, that's the number 1 influencer, whether you're going to have a good season or a bad season, is the environment, particularly around rainfall. So as we go into uncertain territories of climate change, we can get bigger, stronger wet seasons or none at all. We can have higher sea surface temperatures that can kill seagrass beds, and all of a sudden we don't have a fishery. as an industry, we burn a lot of diesel. Like we are a contributor to sort of global warming and whatnot. So trying to build a business for the future around that, like we're looking at alternative fuels and get away from diesel, more renewable or sustainable fuels. That is an absolute nightmare, and navigating through all of that is really challenging. Like we don't have all the answers right now. We're taking it one step at a time, doing what we can to improve this space and to invest in areas that are going to benefit this space. But in terms of challenging, I don't think you get bigger than that.
Wonderful. I was hoping someone would mention that, and you have. Thanks, Brian. And what about you, Christine?
Maybe I'll break it into two things. So the first is more of an industry challenge, which is like raw materials. So Brian summed it up really beautifully about how we are all very aware of the impacts of climate change, and particularly in aquaculture, the raw materials and the infrastructure that we use pretty heavy on the environment sometimes, like from a forage fish perspective. Depends on the species, right? There are some that we've developed a lot of supplementary feed for, where we're not using fish meal or not as much fish meal and fish oil, and that technology is always developing. But it's a continuous challenge, particularly if you're wanting to also increase the number of farm species as well. So there are lots of initiatives internationally where we're looking at different species that we can domesticate and breed. And so you're starting from square one with those again, looking at what type of diets are going to be appropriate for them, and then how can you actually supplement. So from a scientific perspective, that's very interesting, and I think an area that requires a lot of research. And then also the carbon emissions all the way through the chain of production chain and supply chain.
Fantastic. Thanks for your perspective, Christine. And look, we've got a couple of questions here, which is pretty awesome. So we've got Ryan who's asking a question here, and I'll put it out there for the panel to respond. I'm currently a first year studying marine science, and I think it would be beneficial to do volunteer work or work experience, but I'm unsure of where to find it and how to begin this process. That's $1 million question. Great question to ask. Is there any advice here for that? Where does someone get work experience or volunteer work? Who do they talk to?
I suppose I'll take this one because we see a bit of it. So really understanding the sector of the industry, so your target market, what you're looking for within that, the reach out. Most of these companies now will have pathway programs that can be an opportunity to see and get an insight. In today's day and age, you're always challenged with the insurance and duty of care obligations, so that pathway can be somewhat hampered. But identify who you want to work with based on the company, based on the culture you see within it, what they do, and then reach out or come through training organisations like this and get your entry-level qualifications that allow you to be operational in a sense, and then there's an opportunity. But like Brian talked about before, there's many pathways. It's about putting your hand up, reaching out to these organisations, and just saying, I'm interested, this is my background, this is what I'm passionate about, and the doors will be opened.
Wonderful. We've already got some responses here. That's awesome, from Steve and from Louise to that question. Because we're running out of time, I'll go to the next question. Do you know of any agriculture companies or other companies that might have an aquaculture department that offer a graduate program? Maybe our friends there from Tassal and UTAS might have an answer to that one as well. I think they do.
Yeah, I've got an answer to that one, Luciano. So, yeah, I'm Steve Harris. I'm the Training and Development Manager with Cassell's Prawn Farming Division, and we're just establishing a graduate program, initially in partnership with JCU in Townsville, but we'll consider people from other universities as well. And we're looking at actually having using that as a pathway to employment. So an internship initially in the last year of the degree, and then a graduate employment program where we'll look at rotating people throughout our operations as a future career development activity, rather than just locking them into one position.
Thanks, Steve, and also thanks, Louise, for Louise has provided with some input there in the chat area as well, saying there's some great programs and development, so there are opportunities, and always it's always difficult to know exactly where to find this information, and that seems to be a part of the issue that we face in terms of pathways. And where do we find that information? It's a bit of a minefield. So we got one more question here. We'll do one more question from Jade. I'm nearly done with my degree, majoring in marine biology. Are my uni lab skills acceptable for the industry, or should I contemplate a certificate for in lab techniques? That's a broad question there.
Maybe I'll take that one.
Christine? Yep.
Yeah, I think that it depends on what type of work you're going to be looking at doing in the laboratory. Like if you are wanting to enter into a government diagnostic laboratory, for example, usually you'll need further qualifications, either like a master's or a PhD that specializes in things like molecular biology, depending on the field, or bacteriology. But if you're looking at, entering into a job in the field, like for fish health, for example, they're very acceptable. If you are looking at quality assurance, so entering through quality management, then you can get a lot of on-the-job training as well with food safety. So again, I think it just depends on the level that you want to enter at, and the career path that you want to I don't even know what the word is that you want to.
Career pathway.
Yes, the career
Yep.
pathway.
Yep.
And you know what? The craziest thing is that I can't even blame jet lag for that. The career pathway.
That's all right. All good. And thank you, Christine. That was a great answer for Jade. And Sally's got a response here. Seafood Industry Australia and FRDC are currently building an online career pathways platform, which will be available later this year. And we'll no doubt have it on our own Primary Industries Education Foundation Career Harvest website. So careerharvest.com.au is our careers platform. I'll just put the web address here, and it's a bit of a non-stop, one-stop platform for careers in food and fibre. So I'll just put that in there. So thanks for sharing that with us, Sally. Really look forward to that, and I think that will help sort of break down the information about pathways and the like. So if we don't have any more questions, I think we've covered quite a lot of different areas today. And any further comments from our panel today?
Nothing really from me, other than Ryan asked the first question on experience in his first year studying marine science. Oh, I'd love to go back to those years. Ryan, you have the whole world in front of you, and if you get experience early, mate, you will just succeed in your career. I wish I could go back. They were the good times of my life as well.
Fantastic. All good. Well, we're very grateful to those participants today for asking those questions and rounding off our session today. So I'd just like to say a big thank you to our panel today for your involvement, and to Shane, Brian, and Christine. Thank you so much for being involved. Thank you to FRDC, especially Sally, for for assisting us in putting the panel together and for giving us PIEFA the opportunity to host this this careers panel. Now, this recording will be made available on the Career Harvest website as part of our series of careers Q&A. So those of you who know classrooms, teachers, or anyone else who's interested to know more and weren't able to participate today, the recording will be made available. Well, thank you all for today for joining us, and have a great day, and thanks again for your involvement in this wonderful panel today. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks.